What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome back to what is going to be our recap of the ban list. It dropped today, September 26th, very unexpectedly, but at this point we were getting ban list predictions every day, so it's not that surprising. I'm glad we finally got something, and people are either going to love this or hate this. I think it's somewhere in the middle for me. I want to take a look at some of our predictions that we had made as well and kind of compare whether or not those hit. And overall, just talk about the ban list and what it means for the upcoming format. So let's jump into the video. Alrighty, and if you guys are joining us here for the first time, or perhaps haven't, subscribed to the channel before, just want to ask you to hit the like button and subscribe. Go ahead and click that bell icon if you want to stay notified of new videos. We do try to upload videos weekly with different topics of conversation, especially all major goings-on within the Yu-Gi-Oh community, but we do branch out a bit in certain areas as well. So with that being said, let's start off by taking a look at the Forbidden section of the list, which contains 5 new cards. Starting us off is Fairy Tale Snow. This was one of my predictions, so I did hit on this. Fairy Tale Snow is a really good card that was banned for many years due to the fact that it's essentially like a free Book of Moon / revival / disruption card that has no hard ones per turn restrictions of any kind and is just extremely powerful in a variety of decks. There was some theory that it was going to get hit, especially because it is being abused in multiple meta decks going on now. Things like Tearlaments and other decks are able to really kind of maximize its usage while it still has a good place in other decks too. And so they did go ahead and ban it. So this is one of the few times that a card has come off and then quickly been put back. We saw it with Snatch Steal. Snow was around longer than Snatch Steal, of course, and was definitely not as impactful. But it is a really good card, and it just gets better with time, so I'm not surprised that they hit this. Obviously, being powerful in decks like Tearlament and that deck being new, so not being really eligible for a hit, was the move to make, and I did expect this one. It's just really, really good generically, and without a hard once per turn or an errata, it's just one of those cards that would have eventually found its way back if it didn't already. Next up, we've got Ronan Toad, and I did not see this one coming at all, but I'm not technically shocked by it for reasons we'll get into in a bit. Ronan Toad is obviously one of the core components of the Frog engine, was very good in Sprite, but in general was good in the Frog package as a whole. And due to some of the moves that they made, I understand why Ronan Toad did get put on the list here, but it's just sort of kind of crazy to think that Ronan Toad's actually banned. It does have a big drawback, in terms of balance, that it doesn't have a hard once per turn, so you can continue to abuse it by looping it back and just get free resources with ease in combination with this and Swap Frog. So again, not the most shocking hit in the world. It allows them to indirectly hit Sprite while not hitting Sprite, right on the nose, and it does sort of keep the power level of that deck in check a tad. So I didn't predict this one, but it does not entirely shock me. It's just not a move I would have foreseen. Next up, we've got Kriston Helke Fibrax. I did not predict this one either, but I'm not upset that it happened. People have been talking about this card getting banned for a couple of years now, and it's dodged ban list after ban list. The truth is, it's just too good of a card. Like many of its brethren from that Dual Overload set or the Linked Deck Build Pack in the OCG, Hulk was just insanely abusable. It made so many tuners ban-worthy. It made so many decks able to access really high ceiling combos for very minimal resources. And yeah, it's time that it goes. And honestly, I'm not that upset about it. I don't think it's going to be some kind of drastic shift in the meta with this card getting hit, but I do think it's going to at least cause people to think about their approach and how they sort of build decks going forward. So at least we might see a bit of a shake-up from it, but good riddance to Hulk, and hopefully a lot of the things that were locked up because of Hulk will be able to sort of work their way back into the format in the coming ban lists, although at the rate they've been dropping them, who knows when the hell that next one will be. But Hulk is a good hit in my opinion. Next up, we've got Chaos Ruler, the Magical Dragon, I don't know what the fuck his name is. Level 8 Dark Dragon Synchro. This card has been very good for a long time. It was extremely powerful in Dragon Link, being able to mill 5 and also self-revive while getting resources to your hand. We know how good the Chaos theme is with Light and Dark. I mean, this card is not necessarily a foreign concept to many people, although it has kind of gone in and out of, meta relevancy. But it's gotten to a point where not only Dragon Link, but like weird Tearlament Dragon Link combos are able to trigger this, send stuff to grave, get all sorts of free plus effects off of it, and then again it has that self-reviving built in. I don't necessarily think that this card was like the most destructive card ever, but I do understand why they hit it, because it was part of a lot of powerful combos, and it was the biggest way to slow those combos down without hitting more newly released cards. So I'm not upset about it. It's just one of the things that I was like, oh, okay, like I see people talking about it. You saw some speculation. I didn't think they'd actually hit this, but it sort of makes sense. It wouldn't shock me to see this peel off at some point in the future if the game state shifts and other cards get, you know, more deserving restrictions, but for now, if you had Chaos Ruler, you're going to have to find a replacement. And finally, Red Reboot is banned. I'm not shocked by this either, but I didn't even think it was on Konami's radar. I think Red Reboot is one of those cards that people either love or hate. It's extremely restrictive against certain decks, especially because you can play it from hand, and it can basically be a win condition. I thought it was more sacky than anything. I didn't think it was like super problematic, but I guess maybe that is part of the problem, that if they are able to resolve it against you, it can completely shift the game state. So, you know, I don't think anyone's going to cry any tears over Red Reboot being banned, but I don't know that it was necessarily like dominating formats either. I guess it may just be more of a preemptive hit, and you're not going to find a lot of people that are upset by this. I'm rather indifferent towards it overall. Alright, now moving on to the limited section, we do have some really interesting hits and a few maintenance hits as well, so let's jump into that. First up, we've got Blackwing Steam the Cloak. I think you're going to see a lot of these types of cards peel off with Hulk being banned, but they probably didn't want to do too much at once. And don't forget, we do have Blackwing support coming out in the new set in November in Darkwing Blast, so Steam the Cloak's definitely a card that you may want to grab, get your hands on. It doesn't have too many printings, and it's obviously a really good card on its own, never mind within its own deck. I think at 1 this will probably be fine, especially because A, it's a hard once per duel effect, and B, Hulk is banned, so it's not anywhere near as abusable. Still an insanely good card, though, and nice to see that come back. Cyberjar is one I predicted as sort of a wild dark horse pick. Some people were like, oh, there's no way, blah, 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 empty jar, FTK, and all of that. I think Cyberjar's been banned for a long time and probably deserves the opportunity to see what it can do in today's metagame. It's a very fun card, and it definitely has an explosive effect, no pun intended. There is a little bit of concern, I suppose, from the empty jar FTK perspective, but I think that's not going to be like a significant threat in the meta, and I do think that there are ways to play around it and keep it in check. Cyberjar is just slower than it was back in the day, and I do think it, you know, it's one of those cards you could probably have a little bit of fun with, but it's not going to be meta defining. I could be wrong, I just don't think that I will be in this case. Really happy to see this come back, continuing the trend of peeling stuff off that doesn't need to be there anymore. So we'll see what Cyberjar does. That hasn't been printed in a long time, but there's a lot of common printings of this. I don't think it's going to be crazy expensive for any non-foil version. So if you have an idea for Cyberjar and you want to try it out, maybe pick one up, because they are still dirt cheap despite this banlist revelation, with the ulti hobby leagues, you know, those being the obvious exceptions. Mecha Phantombeast O-Lion is also back. That was another one that peeled off after Hulk got hit. Again, not shocking. O-Lion's a really good card, but it was part of that Hulk/Auroradon combo. Well, both of those cards are banned now, so there's no reason that this card can't be legal. It's just a really good card overall, but it's, you know, it's far less abusable when it doesn't have those enablers, so no shock there. This will probably work its way back down to 3, I would imagine, if they follow the trend of just peeling things back as we go. Substitute was a genuine shock, and I can't believe this. This is what I was talking about when I referenced Ronan Toad earlier. Substitute says you contribute 1 monster to special summon 1 frog monster from your deck. Frog monsters, except Frog the Jam, cannot be destroyed by battle. So, basically, Substitute does not have a hard once per turn restriction at all, and its biggest abusable factor was the fact that you could loop Ronan Toad with it to basically burn your opponent for game, or pull off other insane free resource combos. Ronan Toad getting hit does make this card a little bit less powerful, but I'm guaranteeing that people will find ways to experiment with it, because it has been banned for many, many years, and I think people are going to want to try and play it. So it's a cool card for Frog players to get their hands on, but without Ronan Toad, it's far less potent. We'll have to see whether or not there are more combos. I suppose it does still tutor out things like Swap Frog and helps accelerate your plays, but I don't know how useful that's really going to be in terms of the active engines that are playing the Frog cards. We'll have to see what happens, but this one was a genuine shock, and I think a lot of people are going to be finding ways to try and play this card. We'll just have to wait and see whether or not it actually makes any kind of a splash. Spellbook of Judgment, another one I predicted that was on my dark horse list. I did say that, you know, I've had some apprehension about this card before because of how powerful it is, and I remember the free resources plus Jowgen lock that you could pull off. It's been pointed out to me many times that the game has obviously shifted a lot since then, so Jowgen, you know, with a couple set back row is not an unbreakable board, though it could still be a nuisance, I suppose. Spellbook of Judgment does deserve the opportunity to come back, and I think a lot of people that didn't play back in the day don't realize how powerful this card actually was at the time, but the game state has shifted, so we will see what type of impact this has. I can almost guarantee you will see people playing this, probably in conjunction with Mystic Mine and other sort of grindy spellbook, you know, cards to slow down the game and play a lot more control oriented. I'm not super happy about that idea, but we'll see what happens, because I do think Spellbook of Judgment is one that is a long time coming. This was banned, I believe, in like 2015, so it's been about 7 years. So this card is going to be on the radar of people. It's already expensive. It always gets bought out around Banlist season, and if you did pick this up cheap, you might have hit, because it's going to be a card that, you know, either desperately needs a reprint or is just going to continue to be high in price because of what it is and its scarcity. So Spellbook of Judgment is back in the format. And finally, limited a pointer with the red Lotus. I honestly have no idea why, what was going on with this one. I know it's a card that was good and was seeing some play in decks like Eldritch. It's definitely not a bad card, but I don't know that it was on anyone's radar, and so I'm surprised it was on Konami's. Putting it to 1 is fine, I guess. I don't know, this feels like a weird hit that came out of nowhere. Maybe there's something coming up that we don't know about, but I mean, I don't know. I can't really give you guys a reason on a pointer, or even try to think about what the logic would have been from Konami's perspective there. Now, moving on to the semi-limited section, there are no cards to discuss, so we're going to skip it entirely. The unlimited section is the last one, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it. Starting us off, Dynamite Knight, the True Draco Fighter, has come back to 3. I think I might have actually mentioned that in my predictions, although I'm not sure. It was just something I mentioned in passing. This is fine. True Draco as a whole is still missing a lot of power cards, including Dragonic Diagram and Card of Demise at multiples, so this isn't going to do anything, just maintenance peeling. Cyber Angel Ben 10, I'm a little iffy about. This is going to give Drytron a huge buff for a deck that's already pretty good. They were doing alright, I mean, more on the outside looking in terms of Tier 1 and topping events, but Drytron's still a very powerful deck. Ben 10 is just a really strong consistency card, and they've moved it back to 3 pretty quickly, so remains to be seen what type of impact this will have. I know I've said that a lot, it's kind of a cop-out, but we won't know what it's going to do until we get a chance to see it. But considering Drytron was really strong with this card at 3, there's reason to believe they could very easily be there again, and it seems that the market thinks so too, because cards like Diviner of the Herald have been being bought out significantly after this announcement today, so we will have to see what people do. Shooting Riser Dragon, I'm not even going to spend time on. This came back to 3 because Hulk got banned, so it's just far less abusable. It's a good card, but it's not going to do anything without Hulk. Fusion Destiny coming back to 3 is pretty interesting. Of course, Verte is banned now, so there's some, you know, intrigue on this front, and DPE is pretty cheap from the Megaton, so Fusion Destiny is going to spike even more than it already has, probably being back at 3, as people may be able to say, alright, well, we got 3 of this now, we can play the Destiny package in certain things like Sky Striker without having to worry. I don't know that DPE is going to be like a huge meta threat going forward, unless Hero gets more support or Verte were to peel off, but we'll see what happens. Fusion Destiny coming back to 3 is mostly harmless, I think. Nadir Servant was one I predicted. Glad to see this come back to 3. It's just the format has slowed down a lot. This is a good card, but there's other options, and it's just not the problem that it was when it got hit a couple of years ago. Trickstar Light Stage was also speculated on for quite a while. Good to see this one back, I think. A little nervous. This is definitely an oppressive card that can be really annoying, but Trickstar has been on the outside looking in for a while now, so give a little bit of a bone to those players, and maybe they can make something work. If it's too problematic, we can always put it back. And that brings us back to the beginning. So this is definitely a really interesting ban list that shakes up a lot of stuff, but it doesn't really define the meta in any significant way. It hits some of the problem cards, and I think you're going to see a lot of the same top decks still be on the top. Things like Tearlament, Sprite, Eldritch, maybe Runic as that gets more development, and other, you know, decks that sort of trickle into the meta from there. But it does keep some of those other decks in check and will force them to adapt their playstyle, so it should be interesting to see what type of things sort of get incorporated into upcoming formats and decks, if you will. Plus, we got some banned stuff to look out for, like Cyberjar, Spellbook of Judgment, and Substitute. That'll be fun to monitor and see what type of impact they have, if any. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of the video. Do you think this ban list is good or bad? I know people are going to be upset because Mystic Mine wasn't hit. I'm a little salty about it too, but, you know, it's one of those things where it is what it is. We just kind of have to deal with it. I don't know if Konami just doesn't want to hit it, or if it's not, you know, as much of a problem in results as people maybe make it out to be. Definitely an unpleasant card to play against, but maybe it's just one of those things we have to deal with, that it exists. So let me know in the comments, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.